Welcome to the Big Success Podcast, cutting-edge conversations on business and personal success, as well as how to level up. Here's your host, #1 business coach in the world, Brad Sugars.
You know, changing behavior is not something that we all go, yeah, that's what I really want to do. But when you find an expert like Patrick Wanis on this subject, he's going to blow you away. Firstly, his definitions of stuff, infect and affect, that's going to blow you away, just how he sees the world from that perspective. But how he sees success and how he gives you his stuff on finding your why, really brilliant. But more importantly, how to let go of the past and move forward. He has 4 great breakdowns and he has some great formulas that we'll work through during this whole process and give you what it needs to be. Now, he's not only a hypnotherapist, he also works with major organizations on peak performance and all that stuff. I think you're going to love it. Dr. Patrick Wanis. So Patrick, let me start with the big question. What is your definition of success?
Success is simply working towards and achieving your goals and objectives that are in alignment with your values. Now, I'd like to also distinguish between success and being successful. So you have an attorney who's recognized as being a successful attorney, but does he himself see himself as a success? And he might say no, because I have a passion in a completely different area. Or even though I'm a successful attorney, it's not in full alignment with my values. So we've got to look at the difference between what someone else sees us as being a success and what we see ourselves as being a success.
Let's dive in on that values thing, because not many people have ever brought that up on the podcast. How does in alignment with values work? Because that's a real distinction.
This is such a powerful teaching point, Brad, that your whole life must be in alignment with your values. Values simply is the standards and principles that are important to you. What matters to you? What makes a difference to you? What do you stand for? What do you believe in? What is critical to you? What can you not go without? Other than the obvious: food, water, shelter, physical touch. So if you are living in alignment with the things that matter to you, then you can get a sense of fulfillment. Then your day has real meaning for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So let's go back in your life then. At what point in your life did you see yourself as choosing success? Was it as a young boy, as a young man? Where did success become your standard?
Now, the reason I'm laughing, Brad, is that I don't believe I ever consciously chose success.
Right.
I know that you've had extraordinary people on this podcast who've talked about defining moments, turning corners. But I don't believe, for me, that success is a conscious choice. It's just something that I do, meaning I don't set out thinking about failure. There's something that appeals to me that's in alignment with my values, the things that are important to me, and I go for it. I've never stopped to think, oh, my life is in a terrible shambles. Let me turn around. Let me become a success. I don't have the Eckhart Tolle story. I don't have the Anthony Robbins story. I don't have any of those stories. Yes, of course, I had a difficult childhood like most of us have had. But for whatever reason, whether I was born this way, whether someone blessed me with this gift, I have extraordinary hope, which is something I'm going to talk about later. Hope is so important because it's something that you can't buy. You know, people talk about gratitude. Gratitude is really powerful and it can turn around people's lives. But I believe hope is the most powerful emotion. And you say, well, why, Patrick? Because when everything goes wrong, when everything fails, if there's been a tsunami, there's been a hurricane, you've gone bankrupt, everything's gone, your wife's left you, your husband's left you, there's an illness, there's a death, what are you left with? Yes, you have your resources, but your resources are useless if you don't have hope. With hope, you say, I can do it. I can come back. I can rebuild. And hope isn't just an abstract concept. Hope is about seeing a vision, a goal, and believing that you have a pathway to get there. So if everything around me is destroyed, but I wake up and I say, I've lost everything that I've had, and yet I can come back. I'm, rising from the ashes, as they say. And maybe this is an important thing, but I don't see it as a turning point. When I was 15, I was living in a bungalow in the back because we were renovating the back of the house. I come back one day and it's all burnt down, not the house, but the bungalow. Everything I had in that bungalow was gone. I go back to school. I'm only in year 9, and the teachers say to me, "We heard about what happened. We're sorry about what happened, but you got to understand something, Patrick. You still have to sit the exams. You still have to complete all of your work. We're not going to give you any additional advantages, but we expect you to come through with flying colors." Lo and behold, I went, "Oh, these people believe in me. I should believe in myself." But to come back to your question, for some people, success is a conscious choice. I've never seen it that way, Brad, because I don't think about the failure. Yes, I evaluate the possibilities. You say to me, "Patrick, can you get to Thailand on this date to do this presentation for ActionCOACH?" And I say, "Yes." I don't know how, but yes, I will. And there's hope that I'm going to do it. So I would encourage everyone listening, everyone watching right now, to focus on hope. It's such a powerful emotion. It's also one of 4 things that we refer to as psychological capital: hope, optimism, resiliency, self-efficacy. Optimism is the belief that I can create good things in my life, and there are things that go wrong in my life that are outside of my control. Resiliency is the ability to bounce back from setbacks, disappointments, failures, and to do so not just with renewed energy, but with renewed wisdom and knowledge. And then self-efficacy is the belief in your own capabilities in unexplored territories. Now, I don't know if I was born this way, I don't know if it's a gift, but I believe I have these 4 pillars, and that's what keeps me going.
Yeah.
That I always have hope, no matter how bad things are. I believe I can come back. I believe that I can turn things around, which ties to optimism. That I keep bouncing back from failures, mistakes. And I do believe in the word failure, because if I'm a heart surgeon and I have surgery and I'm working on you and the surgery doesn't work and you die, that is a failure. So there's nothing wrong with using the word failure. It's how you respond to it. But the ability to come back from these failures when you've really fallen down and you're flat, and maybe I might lay flat for a day or two and think, I'm totally paralyzed, but I know I'm going to come back. And then self-efficacy is, I've never done this before. And I'll tell you this briefly. I think you might know from my background that I was also a stage hypnotist doing comedy shows before I did hypnotherapy. I'm going to share this with you, give you an example of a belief in one's capabilities, hope, resiliency, and optimism. When I was living in Spain, there was a guy that used to do these hypnosis shows. And I learned that they were all plants. He wasn't actually doing any hypnosis. So I started doing the same thing that he did. And I was doing these comedy shows that were full of plants. But wanting to look authentic, I started reading all these different hypnosis books so that as I was pretending I'm hypnotizing these people, the audience would go, "Wow, this guy's really good." So I would bring up 15 people from the audience. 4 of them were plants and the other 11 were random people. And I would get them to do this exercise, holding their hands and say, "Okay, see how tight you can hold them, etc., etc." And when I would go to the ones that were not plants and I'd say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't think you can be hypnotized tonight. Please go back to the audience." And this one lady looked at me like I was committing murder. And I went, maybe I should just leave her on the stage. So the next week I left more people on stage thinking, if a certain amount don't get hypnotized, it will look more authentic. Lo and behold, I actually hypnotized a couple of people that weren't plants. Progressively, I stopped doing plants and I did real hypnosis.
Yeah.
But why? Because I believed I could do it and I was willing to say, what have I got to lose? Let's try this. And there's an actual gene that sensation seekers and risk takers have. I don't know if I have that gene, but I'm willing to lay it out on the table and say, let's do it.
So if you were to add to that, what is the Patrick Wanis formula for success? Like, how do you ensure success? Or how do you teach people to ensure they can be successful at what they're doing?
Step number 1, what the heck do you want? You can't hit a target if you don't have a target. And people might come to me sometimes for therapy and they don't know what they want. So I ask them the question, what is it that you want that you don't yet have? What is it that you want that you don't yet have? So number one, what's the target? And then I'm implying that you can actually have it. You just don't have it yet. So number one, what is it you want? Let's get clear. Where are you going? The second most important question is the why. Why do you want this? Why is it important to you? Now, here is why the why is important. Things are going to get tough. Things are going to go wrong. They're not going to go the way you thought. There's going to be obstacles. There's going to be hurdles. What is going to keep you going? The why, the reason, the motivation, the drive. Now, here's another aspect why it's important. Why the why is important. When I was teaching at a college, and these were certain specific night classes, and I was brought in as a guest lecturer, tutor, there was a number of kids who had these dreams. So I'd say, okay, come up to the front, and I'd say, so what's your dream? And one kid says, he wants to be a baseball star. And I said, why? Why is that important to you? And he gave me a couple of different reasons, but I kept asking why. Like he said, the audience, the game, but why? This is Socrates in action.
Yeah.
But why? And so eventually what he says that's important is, my father will be proud of me. That my father doesn't take notice of me. This is with more questions. So now we've gotten to the core issue. This is not about becoming a famous baseball or basketball player. What he really is craving is the attention of his father, the relationship, the connection. Let's talk about that. Because this, even when you get to become a famous baseball player, and in other people's eyes, you are a successful baseball player, inside you're not a success because you didn't get what you really wanted. The attention, the connection, the validation, the recognition, the praise, the honor from your father. So why is important? So again, you ask me, what's the pathway to success? Number one, what do you want? Number two, why do you want it? In case you realize what you thought you wanted isn't what you really wanted, and you redirect your objective. Number three, what are you willing to give? What are you willing to give to get this? Because some people say, oh, I know what I want. I know why I want it, but really I'm not willing to give too much for it. I want it to come easily. Maybe it'll come easily, but most likely it won't. So there are three things. And the third, which is what you're willing to give, is really about commitment. So the energy is going to come from the motivation, but the grit is also going to come from the commitment. I think they're the three most important things. Number four, if you're willing to be focused, this is going to sound strange, are you willing to be focused yet flexible? You focus on a goal, but you realize this is not going the way I thought. Do I go here? Do I go there? Which way do I go? I think they're the four keys for me.
Love it. You're on the Big Success Podcast. I'm Brad Sugars. We're going to be back. Dr. Patrick Wanis is going to talk to us about relationships, letting go, moving on, how to do those things, how to get rid of the stuff that's stopping you getting what you really want.
Start living your life on purpose and with a plan. As Brad Sugars teaches, you only get 4,000 weeks, so learn the principles of success and make the most of your life. Join Brad's Purpose event now and create the life that you deserve. Visit bradsugars.com to attend this program as a standalone or as part of Brad Sugars' Entrepreneurial University.
And we're back. Big Success. Patrick, I got to ask, one of the biggest keys to success that you teach is about how to free ourselves from the past. What are some of the things we can learn to do today to move in that direction?
When I say that my mission is to set people free from the past, it's to identify the emotions, the subconscious emotions, and the subconscious beliefs that you took on in the early years, which is in the past, that affects or infects your present, the way that you interact with yourself, with other people, and the world around you. So let's find out. What is your current subconscious belief? What do you believe about yourself and the world around you? Do you believe you're good enough? Do you believe that life is easy? Do you believe that life is painful? Because all of those beliefs are going to co-create your reality. I say co-create because there are always things outside of our control. whether it's the weather, politics, whatever it is, there's something outside of our control. So I want to find out, what do you actually believe about yourself? And here is a little pearl. Unfortunately, we all have this belief to some extent, to some level. It's a subconscious belief that says, there's something wrong with me. I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. I'm not lovable. I don't deserve that. I'm an outsider. I don't belong. There's something off about me. Babies don't have that. We get programmed through our experiences, through our teachings, to believe certain things about ourselves. Am I safe? Can I trust the world? Do I deserve this, or did I experience abandonment, rejection, inadequacy, or not feeling loved? It doesn't matter how smart you are. It doesn't matter how driven you are. Those things are going to affect or infect your drive, your desire for success, and one other one too, Brad, and that is, will you enjoy the success that you actually get? And this is something that I sort of started teaching in 2006. I call it the law of deservedness. It's not a physics law, but it's definitely a psychological law, meaning you only get what you subconsciously feel and believe you deserve, and no more. Because if you get more than what you subconsciously feel and believe you deserve, you'll find a way to sabotage it, push it away, or you simply won't enjoy it. So to set you free from the past, we've got to find out, what beliefs do you have? What emotion are you carrying in your body that hasn't yet been released? Now, this is not an airy-fairy concept. We store emotions even at a cellular level. We know that our thoughts create our emotions. We know our emotions lead us to action, but our emotions also affect our physical body. You know, Brad, that I also specialize in trauma healing and trauma recovery. Those people, and it's a high percentage, those people that have experienced trauma as children have a completely different physiology. The architecture of the brain is changed based on what they experienced as children. If your nervous system is on constant hyper alert, we've tracked through decades of research that people that experience trauma will have problems with heart attacks, with strokes, with liver, all sorts of physiological problems. So we want to find out, what are the emotions that you need to let go of? What is the subconscious belief we need to neutralize? What new beliefs do we need to create? In other words, it's like being reprogrammed. But the way that I do it, Brad, is not to relive the pain or the trauma. This is a process that can be done, contrary to what other people teach, without reliving the pain, without reliving the trauma. You look at it from a distance, and you're reprogramming yourself with my help.
Yeah. I want to just talk about two words you threw in there, affect or infect. Tell me why you use,
like that.
Why do you
I
use,
knew you would like that.
But why use both words? What's the distinction there?
So if we think about, you say, oh, you've really affected me. Now, I use that in the positive sense. You've done something that has created a change within me that is a positive change. You've encouraged me, you've moved me, you've pushed me to do something that is for my betterment, or the betterment of everyone around me. Infect means that there's something that you're putting inside me, or some way that you have influenced me, that is really bad for me and potentially the people around me. So I say, when you show up, are you going to positively affect people, or are you going to infect them with some poison, something toxic, something that's unhealthy? How are you approaching people?
It's a very clear delineation, isn't it? I want to talk about self-confidence and peak performance. There's the getting away from the negative, but then there's the whole positive side of what you teach as well. How do we get into that self-confidence, peak performance place?
Let's look at what confidence is. And I define confidence quite simply. I've done it before, so I can do it again. That's competency. And the second part relates to resiliency and also self-efficacy. So the second component of confidence is, I will be okay no matter what happens. So I already believe in myself because I've had this much success. I've got some competency. But over here, I'm going into unexplored territory. But I say to myself, Patrick, You will be okay no matter what happens. So therefore, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to take the risk. Let me add something with self-confidence. It's really important, this is part of the formula for success, to what extent are you willing to learn from the things that don't work out? To what extent are you willing to learn from the mistakes, from the errors, from the failures, from the disappointments? If you are open and you've been raised with a mindset that says, I can learn from mistakes, but I am not the mistake. The mistake doesn't define me. The mistake isn't me. I'm doing this and I'm willing to learn. And I look, oh, and I remember Damien Hughes said this in your podcast. What a great guy. He described it differently. He talked about being humble enough to say, I don't know everything, let me learn. I present it differently, but I think that's a beautiful way for him to put it. The other way I present it is, you're just trying this out and it doesn't work. It's giving you a feedback and it says it doesn't work that way. What do I need to change? Because the mistake doesn't mean there's something wrong with me. It means there's something wrong with my technique, with my resources, with my tools, with my strategies. If, however, you were someone that was raised with constant criticism, or you were constantly told you're not good enough, or you were told you, or some way you were told or it was communicated you need to be perfect, then you're going to constantly think that you are the mistake.
Yeah.
But if your parents said to you, look, you've made a mistake, what did you learn from this? And at the same time, if your parents encourage you to focus on the things you're doing right. Children, 90% of the time, know when they're doing something wrong. All you have to do is give them that opportunity to see it for themselves. So you're praising them for what they're doing right, and you say, where do you think you could have done better? And you let them come up with it.
Yeah.
Or maybe you point it out to them.
Now, I actually had that with my 5-year-old daughter 2 nights ago. I was like, hey, kiddo, good choice or bad choice? And she's like, it was a bad choice, Daddy. What would have been a good choice? And she told me the good choice. And it's like, excellent.
Well
That's
done.
good to know.
Well done, Brad.
Oh, thanks, buddy. It's interesting, there's no better learning than having 5 kids to help you learn. Can you even apply all this stuff you teach? It's like there's a difference between teaching it and actually applying it on a day-to-day. I want to jump to that next level, though, that peak performance, because ultimately you take people in that journey of let go of all of that, but then move to this amazing place. What is it that brings peak performance to a human in this day and age? Or how do you teach that to someone?
You got to look at the person holistically. If you want to experience peak performance, you have to look at yourself holistically. You can't just talk about your thoughts. You can't just talk about your feelings. You can't just talk about routines. You got to look at the whole picture. And this is where I also bring in neuroscience. So you want to look at the key factors to longevity. And one of them is sleep. Sleep is medicine. You cannot be a peak performer if you're not getting enough quality sleep, and that's 7 to 9 hours for most of us. You have to be in adjustment with your circadian rhythms. So here, notice I'm talking first about the physical body, which affects the mental and emotional body and vice versa. So we talk about sleep. We talk about sunlight. When you wake up, are you exposing yourself to sunlight? Sunlight activates the pituitary gland. In the first couple of hours, it's important to get that 10 minutes of sunlight that puts your body in a routine, in balance, the circadian rhythms, because even your organs are in balance in a circadian rhythm. What are you putting into your body? This is critical. Your food does affect you. What are you putting into your mind? That also affects you or infects you, as we talked about earlier. Exercise. You've got to move your body. You've got to engage your lungs. You've got to breathe. I also do yoga almost on a daily basis. When I say almost, when I'm traveling, I may not have the opportunity, so I make sure that I'm doing a lot of exercise. And the last one, which is tied to all of them, and it's been found all throughout every single study done on longevity and health, the quality of your relationships. The longest study ever done into health was done by Harvard, and they found that the greatest indicator of health, physical, mental, and emotional health, is what? The quality of your relationships. Social connections are important. Look, you already know me, Brad, and sometimes I'm a pretty easy guy to read. Here is a guy that's independent. See, I know my values: fun, freedom, health, independence, and experiences. So I already know there are my 5 values. Am I living according to them? Yes, I am. Good. My point is, I love independence, but I recognize the significance of connection. I've been traveling now for 13 months through 10 different countries. And what is the one thing that I noticed was the significance and the impact of positive relationships and this sense of community. I know that unfortunately the word's been distorted and twisted. Community isn't about like-minded people. It's about the people that are in your social circle that offer you support, the people in your social circle that believe in you, the people that are in your social circle that have your back, the people in your social circle that encourage you, the people in your social circle who call you out when you're doing ridiculous things, the people in your social circle who hold your hand and lift you up because you can't walk, and then you lift them up when they can't walk. That's the, footsteps in the sand concept. So the physical relationships is critical. Now, there's a great guy, if you haven't seen the video, it's the video in the book by Sean Acor on the happiness advantage. And he said, when your brain is in a happy state versus a neutral, negative, or stress state, you will perform better in every parameter when your brain is in a happy state. What is one of the keys that he teaches regarding a happy brain state? Social connections and gratitude, thanking the people in your life, acknowledging all the great things you have in your life. You still want to say, yes, I know that I can do this, I can be this, but let's start with appreciating what we have and then moving towards what we also desire. So again, peak performance is about looking at yourself holistically, your physical body, your mental body, your emotional body, and your spiritual body. And what I mean by that is I teach that we experience life in 4 realms: mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual. Spiritual doesn't even necessarily mean that you have to believe in God or a higher power. If you do, excellent. And studies show that faith, again, a religious community, can be very, very positive for you. But when I talk about spirituality, I talk about connecting with other people, making a positive difference, living from your heart. My heart tells me when I'm doing the right thing. My heart screams to me when I'm doing the wrong thing. My heart cries in pain when I see suffering. This is part of the human experience. So spirituality is about, what can I do to help? What difference can I make? And I know you're going to ask me this question. When we talk about scaling up, how do you go from 1 million to 1 billion or whatever number you're looking for? It's about how much value you can bring. How much value can you bring to the marketplace? How many more people can you help? Because there's always a way to monetize that. If you're talking about Velcro, if you're talking about the credit card reader, think about the person that invented the first credit card machine. Became a multimillionaire because this affected a lot of people. And we can go on and on. The more value you can bring to the marketplace, then the further you can monetize it. But again, my point here is that to become a peak performer, look at every aspect of your life. Don't just think peak performance is about achieving this monetary goal or building this company and then selling it. It's got to be more. It's got to be all of me. So I teach, and I think you'll appreciate this as a father and as a parent. When I'm working one-on-one with clients, I say, well, what's the role of a parent? And they'll say, oh, to love their children. I say, okay, that's great. What does love mean? And then there's a whole series of descriptions. And I say, but is love enough? And I say, perhaps the actual goal of a parent is to give everything to the child that he or she needs to realize his or her full potential. That's what you're doing. You're not trying to create a mini-me, and you're not going to create a mini-me if you're a man and you've got a daughter. You're not going to get a mini-me. You want to know, who is this beautiful soul, this beautiful human that I've helped bring into this world? How can I help them to realize their full potential? What's in their heart? What's in their soul? What excites them? Maybe I'm a person, as you can quite clearly tell, that loves to talk and is highly extroverted. But lo and behold, here's my son or my daughter. That's not what inspires them. That's not what moves them. They're extremely not introverted as much as inward thinking. So I'm going to connect with them and find out and encourage them to realize their potential, not to become who I want them to be, but who they can be. And we can do this in one-on-one relationships, and that's to say, darling, honey, love of my life, whatever you call your loved one, I want to help you to become the best version of yourself. I'm here for us to mutually support each other. So again, I'm focused on relationships because that's a huge part of who we are and what gives meaning to our lives.
Big Success Podcast. We'll be back in a moment. Dr. Patrick Wanis.
Patrick Wanis, PhD, helps people rapidly change their behavior. As a human behavior and relationship expert, Wanis has developed subconscious rapid transformation technique therapy and is now teaching it to other practitioners. To learn more about Patrick Wanis, please visit patrickwanis.com.
You're back on the Big Success Podcast. Patrick, we touched on it before the break, but I want to talk about the difference between someone who goes for good and someone who goes for great or amazing or out of this world. What do you see as a difference between someone who goes for that versus goes for the massive goal type thing?
Well, again, we want to first define what is the difference between good and great and amazing, and each person hopefully has their distinction. Great might be, I affect more people. I'm doing something that's larger than me. See, I could do good one-on-one, but if I'm doing something great, something phenomenal, something amazing, I'm tapping into something that's bigger than me. I want to achieve something that will take more people than me. If you think about Elon Musk, if you think about Steve Jobs, none of them did it on their own. They had to have teams. So to do something that's bigger than them, because Steve Jobs has changed the way that we live, I'm not even an iPhone user, but I acknowledge he's changed the way we live because Android has been affected in a positive way thanks to iPhone. Point is, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, other great people have done things that are so much bigger than themselves. Now, again, let's go back to the question. Well, Patrick, what's the difference between that person that did some good and these people that are doing great things, big things that affect so many of us, that are larger than life? It's the vision, number one. You have to have a big vision. You have to believe in yourself, but above all, you must have the desire to make a difference, to be able to say, either here is a need that is already in existence, or I'm such a visionary, I can see that this will be a need. Steve Jobs was predicting things way ahead of his time. Was it a real need for us to compress into what was at the time an iPod, I think it was called, this little gadget that could take 4 gigabytes or 2 gigabytes of music? It could have hundreds of songs. Was that a real need? No, it wasn't. We were okay with the Walkman or the cassette or whatever it was at the time. But he said, I can make the experience greater for people. I can make them live life differently. So what was the difference between good and great and amazing? He was thinking bigger. He was thinking how he could affect people. He was thinking about the experience for people. So if you want to go from good to great, how can you make a greater difference, a bigger difference in people's lives? What do you have that people need, that people will need, or that will bring extraordinary value to their lives? That's the key question.
Let me just take that a slightly different tangent. You've coached a lot of people and you've seen those who allow themselves to think that big, allow themselves, and I'll use the word allow on purpose here. Some people don't allow themselves to go massive. How would you take someone who's sort of restricting themselves and help them allow themselves to go for the massive goal?
Let me first acknowledge what a beautiful way you said that, to recognize that there are people that do not allow themselves to go massive. In other words, they're creating the limits. The limits are created by our subconscious beliefs, not our conscious beliefs. Because consciously we say, oh, look at all these great ideas. And we go, uh-oh, I can't do it. Or I'm going to sabotage myself.
Yeah.
Or subconsciously, I have a limit that says I cannot go more than $1 million or more than this amount. So how do we help people that don't allow themselves to think massive to go bigger? We have to find out, when did they create the limiting subconscious belief that says I can only produce this amount, I can only do this amount, I can only be this. And it's always in childhood. Now, look, for me, I had limitations in other ways. You know, my father was abusive. My mother, to quite an extent, was very narcissistic. I'll humbly say I have this gift that I'm a very, very extremely hopeful person that believes in constant possibilities. Perhaps that was encouraged by my two grandmothers, particularly my paternal grandmother, who basically would let me do whatever I wanted. When I would go and visit her for 2 weeks at a time, she would let me go out at night. I was 15 and she let me go to a club because she simply believed in me. So I would just go, oh, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this. And then I've almost drowned 7 times. You'd think, by now, Patrick, you either should know how to swim, you bloody idiot, or you should not get into the ocean. Well, I still don't know how to properly swim, but I definitely get back into the ocean. Why? Because I don't believe in limits. I say, I know I will be okay no matter what happens. Goes back to confidence. So working one-on-one with people that have created limitations for themselves, which is most of us, I want to go back and say, okay, who told you you can't be more? Who told you that you're not good enough, you're not worthy, you're not lovable, you're not special, there's something wrong with you, that you should punish yourself for a mistake you made, that you should be perfect? When we remove all of those barriers, all of those walls, then we create a new foundation, which is now that we've removed all this and you're willing to let go of that old image that says, well, how do I let go of feeling sad and depressed and negative because that's all I've known all my life, that's who I've been. What's the opposite of that? Now we've let go of the past, we want to focus on building the foundation of what are your gifts? What are your talents? What do you have inside you that you can give? And you always have so much more to give than what you are giving. Not in the sense of you're not doing enough, you're not good enough. No,
Yep.
All I'm saying is I believe you have tapped into only a small part of your potential, because most likely someone in your life, a teacher, a sibling, a cousin, your mum, your dad, an aunt, someone told you you're not good enough, you can't do it. I'm thankfully a rebel. And when I had an uncle who always used to compete, put his son in competition with me scholastically. And one time when he said to me, oh, you're going to do radio and television? You can't do that. I went, that's exactly what I needed.
Yeah.
Just someone to set up the challenge. I'm going to go. So it's again, we want to find out, what are your subconscious beliefs about yourself, about the world around you, about what you can achieve, about what your talents are, what your potential is. Because I do believe that there are people with natural gifts. I have some natural gifts when it comes to connecting with people and identifying their issues and doing therapy, etc. But I've also developed those skills further, and that's critical. So we want to find out, what are your natural skills? We want to teach you that you can almost learn anything or everything if you're willing to apply yourself, and if you're willing to learn the right strategies, and if you're willing to commit, and if you're willing to be determined and engage with grit. There are great possibilities. Hope enters the game.
Love it. Patrick, final question. What is your best advice you ever got, or the best quote you ever read on the subject of success?
I'm not going to give you one. I'm going to give you 3. They're going to be short, but
How did I guess
critical.
that?
Now, why is that? Because the first one's going to be about hope. The second's going to be about love and regret. The third's going to be about wisdom. So the first one about hope, this guy just blew my mind away. And you probably know who I'm talking about, Zig Ziglar. First, I couldn't believe that anyone has the name Zig Ziglar, but I think he was from Texas. And I heard the quote when I listened to his audio tape 20, 30 years ago. And he said, there are very few, if any, hopeless situations. But there are many people that lose hope in the face of some situations. And I went, yes, I resonate with this. And just 2 days ago in Brazil, I meet an Argentinian who says to me, oh no, Patrick, I don't have a solution and you don't. And I said, that's not true. We just haven't yet found the solution. You're losing hope, but that doesn't mean that it's real. This situation isn't hopeless. Maybe you can't keep living in this place and you have to move, but your life isn't hopeless. So hope, Zig Ziglar, always look for hope in every situation. Not everything is hopeless. Number 2, Socrates. I talked earlier about the Socratic method, which is simply,
Why?
Asking, but why? But why? 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 Now, I never studied that. I just would naturally ask that question. Lo and behold, many years later, I'm studying Socrates. Socrates would love to engage people in these philosophical questions and discussions. And incidentally, psychology comes from philosophy because philosophy was the search for the good life. And that's what psychology should be about, helping you to have a good, great, amazing, phenomenal, massive life. So Socrates is brought up before court because he's been accused of corrupting the mind of youth by asking his questions, but why, and constantly challenging people to the extent that people would challenge so much they realize they either don't know what they're talking about or they don't really believe in what they're teaching. So he does what in Greek is known as an apologia. It's not an apology in the English sense. It's an explanation in one's defense. And what he basically says, contrary to the internet, he doesn't say the one thing that I know is I know nothing. That's not true. It's quite a long speech. And what he basically says is, look, the difference between you and I is, and this is the slight advantage I have, is that you think you know everything and you don't. I recognize that I know some things, but I don't know everything. And this is what makes me superior to other people in general. So what he's really saying is, I don't know everything, but I'm open and I'm willing to learn and I'm going to ask questions. So number one, Zig Ziglar hope. Number two, Socrates, keep an open mind. You can always learn more. You don't know everything. I used to think that crap when I was 21, 22. And then, unfortunately, that was a long time ago. But wow, even I'm constantly learning every day, Brad, just talking to you right now, you questioning me, you challenging me. I'm learning more even from the questions you ask. The third quote is something that I say. Now, I'm not saying this out of ego. It's based on experience. It's the end of your life. You recognize you're sitting on a porch. Maybe it's a rocking chair. You're watching the sunset go down, and somehow you know this is going to be your last sunset. What are you thinking about? You're looking back on your life, and you're thinking about the regrets. But what will your regrets be? Will they be the things you did? Most people think that's what it'll be. Or will it be the things you didn't do? I promise you, I guarantee you, based on research and interviews, it will be the regret of the things you didn't do. And they almost always fall into one umbrella: relationships and love. I wish that I told my children more often I loved them. I wish I'd spent more time with my husband or my wife. I wish that I could have had this conversation with this person. I wish that I could have apologized to this person. I wish I could have asked for forgiveness. So that final one, the quote of success, is regret. Think about your life now, almost the stoic way. What will you regret if you don't do this? So when people say, you're traveling to Brazil, why? I go, why not? I mean, what can I learn? What can I experience? And I constantly remind myself of this too, Brad, and it's a tough one. I was in Australia recently, about a month and a half ago, and you know yourself, whenever you go back to family, that's when all your BS comes up. It all comes up. You think, oh, I'm so cool, I've healed all my stuff. And lo and behold, here comes your family, and now you're like, oh my God, I've still got all this unresolved stuff. And I have to remind myself, Patrick, when will you be back in Australia again? Here is the opportunity. Open your heart, lower your ego, keep it going down, open your heart, come with an open heart and a strong back, open heart, be vulnerable, say I'm sorry, say I was wrong, say I love you, say please forgive me. Those are the important words. So love and regret, hope and wisdom, be open to learning.
You're on the Big Success Podcast. We'll be back next week with more on success. Dive into the show notes, follow Patrick Wanis, keep learning, keep growing, and keep aiming for more success. And that's the Big Success Podcast for today. Hopefully you took a lot of notes, learned a whole bunch, and if you need to, go re-listen to it. We dropped a lot of information right there today. Big success is what it's all about. And by the way, if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button so you're here with us every single week on the Big Success Podcast. I'm Brad Sugars. That's BS. Big success is what we're shooting for. Check the show notes for all the links. Make sure you follow through. Keep learning. Keep coming back. Oh, and by the way, share this with any of your friends who you know are up for success. I'll see you next week on the Big Success Podcast.
You've been listening to the Big Success Podcast with the #1 business coach in the world, Brad Sugars. To learn more about how to achieve business and personal success, as well as how to level up or listen to past episodes, visit www.bradsugars.com.